Two guys in their early 50s with one dream: to achieve middle-aged sporting glory. This is the Missing Links Golf Show. Pilgrims, and Andy Walker. Welcome back to the 70th episode of the Missing Links Golf Show. I got to say, I'm not used to that intro yet.
No, it's a bit weird. Given
it's confronting.
We spent the first 18 months saying two guys either side of 50, but you've got to accept life where it is, not
where it was,
look back and
where you want it to be.
Think about the good old days.
We do talk a lot on this show about not time traveling, so perhaps I should listen to that advice. That's all very fair. It's all very fair. But I've also heard, Andy Walker, that once you do hit your 50s, you become somewhat more prone to injury. Any views on that statement?
It would seem so. I mean, certainly in my case, we probably started around 40. To be honest with you, I've had a few over the last sort of decade or so, but seems to have jumped out a couple of times over the course of the podcast. So yes, currently, obviously, the wrist injury is part of that, which. Still having a bit of a rest after almost a week away from the game after what was the New South Wales Senior Amateur Championship. And look, it has improved. I've been wearing it was actually not a wrist brace, it's the thumb brace because it's at the base of my thumb. And the wrist braces that I found weren't quite covering the area that I needed to. And the girl at the local pharmacy, lovely girl, suggested I try a thumb brace. And I tried that and it was absolutely perfect. So I've been using that ever since. Yeah, so it's been good. I've been using it while I've been working, and it certainly has helped alleviate the discomfort that I was feeling while I was working. And I think just resting it for a little bit, although I have been, we briefly mentioned before we jumped on, I have been doing some swing practice with the stack device.
Come on, say it.
which I think I described as the stack stick.
There we go, the stack stick.
When we're talking about it, so I'm not sure that you should be saying that fast three times quickly. Yeah.
Everyone loves a good stack stick, though. Of course you do. It's fantastic.
Been doing a bit of practice or a bit of swing simulation. With the stack stick, which there's still, as I said, there's still a little bit of discomfort there in the wrist, but certainly a lot better than where it was a week ago. So I'm going to give it another week, and then hopefully in another week we should be right to go.
Very good. I wonder if we should invite Sashay McKenzie back on the show to talk about the stack stick, to see what his views are on that piece of terminology. I'm just not convinced that he'd be that excited about hearing it referred to as a stack stick.
No, I don't think we would either, but, it's pretty funny.
Sashay, we love you. You do a great job. Well, that's good news, Andy Walker, to hear that you're on the mend.
On the mend.
Good news to hear that the new brace is doing its job. I would say we would give that the big thumbs up. And
yep.
Hopefully things continue to improve.
Well, I think it's something that I'm going to have to wear once I'm fully mended. I think it's something I'm going to have to wear as a bit of a proactive measure for the amount of time I spend at my desk and at my computer.
I think that's sensible. Maybe whilst you're driving as well. I feel like it'd look pretty red hot when you got your hands on the steering wheel there. I think that could
just one glove?
Yes, one glove, yeah. That'd be quality. Someone pulls up to you, next to you at the lights, and just give them the wave with the partially gloved mitt. gloved mitt, gloved hand.
Yep.
Yeah, I think is what I was trying to say. Anyway, I think that'll do on that topic. So, here we are, mid-March. There's a bit to talk about tonight, Andy Walker. I do want to talk about putting.
However, I must say before we start, and
yes.
and before we sort of get into the content, I must sort of give you a little bit of kudos for changing, and those people actually watching on YouTube will notice that Steve has changed the picture on his background, even though it is the opposite.
It's flipped.
It's the reverse image of the 18th there at Sawgrass, obviously paying homage to the Players' Championship, which by the time this is released will probably be halfway through the last round. I think it's likely to be.
Yep. Which is, I mean, obviously, therefore, I'm live here on the 18th tee. Course is a bit empty at the moment, though, to be fair.
Yep.
But anyway, thank you for noticing.
And given where it is, and it's the reversed image, I did actually question whether you were actually there or not. I mean, there is the theory I was reading recently that in our universe, apparently they've now theorized that there is a parallel universe to ours that's actually running backwards in time. So I was actually thinking that photo was from the parallel universe being reversed.
Okay, so you're going to get me off on one here, all right? So I apologise in advance for this program. I really do. We're going to bend your mind here for a moment. So I recently was watching a documentary on the topic of infinity, right? Strap yourself in. So infinity is endless. Okay, so it is.
It's infinite.
It never ends. You can't put a number on it, because if you added one, it'd be one bigger. So it never ends. All right, so that's a big concept for our little primate brain to wrap its head around. But imagine if it was infinite, the ways in which you can combine a certain number of atoms. Well, that's finite. That's not infinite, right? Like there's only, so if you take 20 billion atoms, there's only so many ways you can assemble them.
Yeah.
So if you took a portion of the universe, right, just want to take one big cube, and within that cube, Earth and our solar system sits.
Yep.
And then you said that the universe is infinite. If it was, now it might not be, but if it was, or universes, like space, is infinite, then at some point there must be a place where those atoms are arranged in exactly the same way. And in fact, in every way that you can imagine, it must repeat at some point. So therefore, not only must there be a parallel universe which is the same as us but going backwards, i.e. me sitting on TPC Sawgrass 18th tee, which is reversed, but there must also be another universe which is exactly the same, which has got Andy Walker and Steve Hinks having a chat about this at exactly the same time as what we're currently doing. And in fact, there must also be another universe, in the infinite universes, where I'm called Andy Walker and you're called Steve Hinks. Because there's only so many ways that you can arrange the atoms.
Wow. Okay.
And ladies and gentlemen,
I like it.
This is why we're doing a golf podcast and not an astrophysics podcast.
Wow. I must admit, when I thought going down that line of conversation, I didn't think this is where we were going to end up.
No, that was not in the rehearsal, Pilgrims, at all. Can we talk about putting?
in this universe or the parallel universe?
And the infinite number of ways that you can hold a putter and get it into the hole. So,
oh, wow. Yeah. Okay, let's do it.
Are we ready?
Yeah, we're ready.
Oh, I need to take a breath after that. That was quite something. Actually, maybe we should do an astrophysics podcast at some point. Get Brian Cox on the line. Anyway, let's talk about putting. So, why do we want to talk about putting? I want to talk about putting because I have come to the conclusion, Andy Walker, that putting is an important element of golf. Agree or disagree?
Okay. Given it sort of takes up about, what do they say, 40% of the game or something, thereabouts. Yeah, it's reasonably important, I'd say.
Yeah. And the purpose of the game is getting the ball in the hole. And generally speaking, not always, but generally speaking, you do that by putting the ball into the hole. And if you can't do that particularly well, it has a tendency to affect your score.
Yep.
And if you don't believe me, I want to provide some evidence.
Yeah. I think at this point in time, David McClellan would be proud.
Wouldn't he, though? I don't know if he'd go about it quite in this fashion, but anyway.
No.
I do want to take you through a couple of my recent rounds, Andy Walker. They're worth talking about, particularly from a putting perspective. So a couple of weeks ago, I played 9 holes at Royal Dubbo, at my home club. And over those 9 holes, I shot 2 over, which I thought was pretty good.
Yep.
About a week later, I played another 9 holes and I shot 1 over, which I thought was pretty good.
Is this the score that you were trying to put together and submit in the yearly championship?
It's exactly what it is. Because that would have been a pretty good 18 holes. It would have been plus 3 18 holes. Anyway, the point
would you
that
have won the comp for that? That would have. Oh no, of course, 42 points.
Benny the burglar. Yeah, Benny the burglar Walker. Now in that strokes gained stats on the first one at plus 2, driver this is interesting, I was losing 2.68 shots. So that's extrapolating it out to 18 holes, right? So it's kind of doubling all the values. Approaches, I was losing 2.16 strokes to a scratch handicapper. Short game, I was gaining 1.46 strokes on a scratch handicapper, and putting, I was gaining 2.82.
Wow. Okay.
Yep. All right. Then we go to the second 18, which was actually a plus 1, so I was 1 shot better. Driver, I was losing 0.1, so I'd improved 2.5 shots. Approaches, I was gaining 0.86, so I'd improved 3 shots. Short game was even, and then putting, I was losing 0.6 of a shot, so putting had deteriorated slightly. We're getting to a point here. Fast forward to last weekend's competition round, the first competition round for March, which will be my first card to go into the yearly championship, with an awe-inspiring 27 points.
Was it the pressure of the comp or like?
Well, I mean, maybe it was, but it was an interesting round. I'm not going to go through the round in detail, but I am going to give you some highlights, Andy Walker, because I think they're worth referencing because they set us up for this conversation.
Highlights or lowlights?
Yes. Now, for the pilgrims who are involved in our Missing Links Golf Show podcast members group, you will have seen a few stats that I popped up there asking for some advice / consolation / bit of, making me feel like all was not lost in the world. But what was interesting is in that 27 points, I shot an 86, which was actually past 69, so that's 17 over.
Which technically beat me in the first round of the New South Wales Senior Amateur at Pacific Dunes. So
it probably wasn't as hard a course as Pacific Dunes, but anyway. You might be interested in the breakdown, Andy Walker, because against a scratch handicapper, my driver, I gained 2.38 shots.
Wow. Okay.
I missed one fairway all day. I had a 93% fairways hit statistic. And the fairway that I missed.
I'm not looking forward to the rest of your stats.
Well, it's interesting because it sort of plays to the stories. But the fairway that I missed as well, I was about a metre into the rough, like it was, and I still had an 8 iron at the green, like it wasn't in the trees. I don't think I've ever driven the ball like this. It was robotic. It was really good, and it was very, very windy. So, it was good to be able to be driving that straight, because let's just say iron play was not quite at that level and was getting smashed by the wind, which was really interesting, whereas the driver was not getting smashed by the wind. So there's something.
Are you doing anything different with your iron play versus your driver? Were you trying to like flight your driver down into the wind? Or
I have always hit my driver a bit of a lower ball flight than a lot of other people, as you would be aware. The technique changes that I've been working on with Jake for iron play actually has resulted in a bit of a higher ball flight now with my irons than what I used to have. So that probably played a bit of a part. Also, I do think the number one thing is when you strike the ball in the center of the club face, the wind affects it less than when you slightly mishit it. That's just my opinion. And when I look through, the shots that miss greens and those sorts of things, a lot of them weren't flushed. They were, whether they were slightly towed or slightly thinned or slightly fatted or whatever. And even a shank, there was a shank in there as well, Andy Walker.
Nice.
You'd have been proud.
And I think, certainly from my perspective and having played a reasonable amount of golf on windy golf courses. I mean, I was a member of New South Wales Golf Club for a number of years, and then I played out at Magenta, certainly for the first part of, once I moved out of Sydney. I think a lot of it has to do with how you flight the ball. So if you've got your iron play and if you've made swing changes and are hitting it higher, if you're then getting into windy conditions and you're not trying to flight the ball better, then it's going to be probably more difficult for you to control your iron play than what it was previously. So might be something to talk to Jake about as to, with these swing changes, how to flight it down when you need to. Flight the ball when you come into windy conditions.
I think that's a fair point. Like there was a couple in particular. There was one certainly which was on the first of the par threes, which is the third hole. I was hitting 6 iron. It was slightly into the wind, but the wind was more left to right. And I took the extra club for the wind, and I aimed at the right side of the green, and the wind smashed it. Not only did it miss the right side of the green, it missed the left side of the green, it missed the left bunker, and it was left of the bunker, and actually hit on the downslope of the non-green side edge of that bunker and shot it into the trees, which caused a double bogey. But anyway, that's disappointing. But it got absolutely whacked like you wouldn't believe, which, is one of those things. So,
and I've heard John Sherman talk about this as well, because John Sherman's very much a fan of not actually changing your swing and just having the one ball shape. And he talks about, if you're playing into the wind, just take 2 clubs less. So instead of hitting an 8 iron, you're hitting a 6 iron. But for me, and having played a fair bit in windy conditions, I disagree with that. I certainly think when you're playing in wind, you need to learn how to flight the ball, because once you understand and learn how to flight the ball, you can control it so much better in wind, and the wind just doesn't affect it. It still affects it, obviously, but a flighted shot versus one that's just hit at your sort of standard flight will be dramatically different. So I think it's really important and really key, and especially if you're going to start playing in a few different senior events, and you go, and especially if you're going to, we talked about sort of going down to Melbourne, and maybe there's a tournament down there on the Monterey Peninsula which just gets as windy as hell. Maybe the Mornington
Peninsula as well, unless all of a sudden we're flying to Melbourne in the US.
Well, yeah, okay, so fair point. Mornington Peninsula, would love to play in if we ever get to the Monterey Peninsula.
Also windy.
That, also very windy. But yeah, the Mornington Peninsula, if we're going to go down there and play golf down there, I think that, it's imperative that you have those shots at your disposal.
So how do you do it without going too far down that rabbit hole? Like, what's the story? Is it back in your stance?
Yeah. So basically, for me, it's effectively back in your stance. So your hands are well in front of the ball, and it's a 3/4 swing. So like your punch shot. But it's also you don't want to swing too hard because what you don't want is spin on the ball.
Yeah.
So if you can flight it so that there's less spin on the ball, that's actually quite a good thing in windy conditions. And I mean I've played in conditions where the best thing you can do is only hit it somewhere between 7 to 10 meters off the ground and basically run it most of the way. So yeah, having those conditions, and you look at the way that the guys play the British Open or the Open Championship. At times, there's a lot of running the balls onto the green, landing well short and letting it bounce on, and obviously when you're playing, it depends on the grass you're playing on. Of course, playing on Kikuyu, you're not going to be able to do it. But New South Wales, you're playing on couch fairways, so it was a lot more receptive to landing it short of the green and running it on. So having less spin on the ball, having a lower ball flight, and having the ball sort of back in your stance, sort of 3/4 swing. That's probably the best way that I've learned how to flight the ball better in windy conditions.
Good tips. Write them down, Pilgrims. Some good tips from Andy Walker. I'll give it a go. I have to do a little bit of practice on that. Anyway, the upshot of that is that greens in regulation was 44%. It was 5 out of 18 greens.
Yep.
That doesn't sound right for 44%, but anyway.
It's 5 out of 18 is not 44%.
No, it isn't. It was 5. I can tell you now it was 5 out of 18, but I think potentially ShotScope's getting a couple of those stats slightly wrong.
Yeah. Well, given 6 out of 18 is
33%. Yeah, I know. So it was about 28%. It was dire. Short game was also pretty ropey, to be fair. Struggled a bit around the greens, but where it got interesting was putting. And my average putts per round has been sitting at around about 32 for some time now. In this particular round, I had 37 putts.
Ooh. Yeah, wow.
Okay. And on the front nine alone, I had 20 putts.
Yeah, that hurts.
Yeah, it was terrible. And it was one of those things. There was a couple of things happening.
Did you count any putts from the fringe, or these were all putts
in 30
from the green
in the 37? There is 2 from just off, like on the fringe. So it'd be 35 on the green, but 30, like realistically, it was 37 because they were about probably 6 inches on the fringe. So I think they should be counted as a putt, to be perfectly honest, even though technically it's not in the stat. So unfortunately, what happened was a couple of things. Firstly, playing a course that I've played half a dozen or so times before, but not brilliantly familiar with. Green reading was pretty ordinary. I do feel like the gustiness of the wind didn't help, but in particular, it was just poor putting. Like leaving the first ones well short, and then leaving a lot of the second ones on the edge for 3 putts. I probably had 4 or 5 3 putts in the round.
Yep.
So the putting stat, strokes gained, was minus 2.74. And to be perfectly honest, I think that's kind. I actually think it was worse than that, and it felt worse than that. And it was dreadful. The other thing that's been happening as well, because we're going to get into this, is I've started mucking around with a few different techniques with my putting, which has come out of a recent experience.
Okay.
And there's also
looking forward to hearing about that.
You will. And there's also been a couple of particular pieces of information that I think have gotten into my head, and this is a bit of a concern. So we're going to go, Pilgrims, for a bit of a deep dive into putting, and hopefully how to improve it. But those rounds, I think, just set the scene for what we need to do.
Yeah, and I think a little bit of background here in the way that I view putting, and a lot of this has been influenced by reading and listening to Mark Brody's Every Shot Counts, and the way that he explains, generally speaking, the PGA Tour and the guys that win on the PGA Tour is the guys who are at the top all the time, and you think about your Scotty Schefflers and your Xander Schauffele's and these guys, fantastic ball strikers, right? And that's why they're there week in, week out. When they win, that's when they have their hot weeks with the putter.
Oh yeah.
So there's not a lot of difference week in, week out with their ball striking. They're always good. They're always on with their ball striking. It's just when they have those weeks where the putter runs red hot, they're the weeks that they have a tendency to win. And that shows in the strokes gained data that comes from the PGA Tour. So that's how I view putting since I've read Mark Brody's book.
I think you're spot on. There was another, I can't remember where I saw this, so I can't quote the source, but there was another sort of a, poster, meme, call it what you will, about it. And it said this, and I actually think that there's truth in this. It said, if you want to break 90 or above, if you want to break 90, work on your driver. Eliminate the big numbers through lost balls, hazards, out of bounds, really off the planet drives.
Yeah.
If you want to break 80, work on your irons, hit more greens in regulation, really get control over your distances and start flushing your irons. If you want to break par, work on your putting because that's when you're going to score more birdies. And I actually think that makes, it's a bit of a simplification, but I think it makes a degree of sense.
Well, that's, I think we covered this. I think it was Dr. Bob Rotella said that the better you get, the more important that short game and putting becomes.
Yeah, that's right.
So when you're, say, a 30 marker or between 20 and 30, then you need to be working on your ball striking because that's where you're going to get the most gains and you're going to save the most shots. But as you get to be a better golfer, your short game is really the area that you need to work on the most because that's what's going to set your score up. And especially to shoot really low, you're going to need to be a great putter and have a great short game to be able to take advantage of good ball striking.
Interestingly, in the competition on the weekend, I played in a group with 3 other people that I'd never met before, one of whom was a 31 marker. Yep. And he made a couple of really good putts during the round, drained a couple of long putts for triple bogey and quadruple bogey. So case in point. Doesn't matter how good your putting is if you can't get to the green more than regulation +2. So anyhow, I want to take you back a step now because that's what's been going on with the game and that's kind of highlighting the importance of putting. So what have I been doing about it, Andy Walker, is the question. And the answer to that, I had a really enlightening experience about a week ago. I went and had a putter fitting. Now, this is exciting.
Right. Okay.
But not just any old putter fitting. It was not a case where I went and just tried a whole bunch of putters and went, yep, this feels good. Yep. I actually went to a place that specialises in this sort of thing. I did get a voucher from a very good friend of the show. So I do appreciate that. Thank you very much. That was a 50th birthday present.
Nice.
And it was to a place called Club Champion Golf down in Sydney. So what sets it apart, what made it really interesting is that they've got this machine there which is called the Sam Putt Lab. Don't know if you've ever heard of the Sam Putt Lab.
I have heard of the Sam Putt Lab,
Yeah, so the Sam Putt Lab, the reason it's called Sam, it's not a person, it's a company name, which is Science and Motion, SAM. So that's where the Sam comes from. It's a UK company. And basically it's like the TrackMan of putting, right? So it's it's this machine that stands next to you. And you know how the TrackMan's actually, aesthetically it's quite nice. It's well packaged and it's, what you might expect out of the American aerospace industry. The Sam Putt Lab looks like it's something out of 1960s Russia because, it's kind of the European way, I think, a lot of the times. They're not don't really have the rounded edges and that sort of thing. The Sam Putt Lab, it's not the most attractive machine, but I tell you what.
Would you describe it as the next generation Sputnik?
It's kind of like that. We're back into space, people. We're back into space. No, so, but it's interesting because I never realised before this experience how many stats and measurements and metrics you could take about a putting stroke.
Yeah, right. Okay.
And what ones are important versus what one and important for a fitting purpose as opposed to, say, a coaching purpose. Because you might use the Sam Putt Lab if you were, like a really metrics-driven coach that was going to try and improve someone's putting stroke. You might use this because it's giving you all these metrics that the naked eye just can't see. If that makes sense.
See, I would have thought with putting, if your putter is on the correct line on your backswing and follow through, and you're keeping your putter face squared, like there's not too much more to it than that, is there?
Oh, shall we go through some of the metrics, Andy? Is that what you'd like to do?
Well, let's do that, because I mean that they're usually the two things that I focus on when I'm putting.
So they're definitely probably the most important. Okay. But we'll go through a little bit of the. I mean,
there's no wrist cock. I mean, you're not shallowing the putter on the way through.
I'd hope not. I really hope not.
So I'm interested. You've got me intrigued.
The thing with this as well is that we're talking such fine margins, right? Like a lot of it is almost imperceptible to the naked eye, because you're talking like a half to 1 degree of differences. Now you're not going to see that, and you really can't even feel that. So the first one. And sorry, what I should say is that it's a UK-based company. I did start to go down that path. They then benchmark all the measurements they take of you against this massive database of the European Tour pros.
Yeah, right. Okay.
So it's got all this data from the best putters to the mid-range. So you kind of get these comparison scores against where you sit from, in that kind of a range, which is interesting, and certainly it's a good discussion point during the lesson, or during the fitting process, but probably not what we'll go through now. Suffice to say that I was at the bottom end of average on European Tour putting stats, which I actually thought was pretty good. It was better than what I would have expected. Anyway.
Yep.
So the first metric that it looks at, this one surprised me, and it's the face aim at address.
Okay. Yep.
Okay. So not an impact. That's coming next.
Yep. So it's effectively you've got the face square when you're
correct.
Yeah. Okay.
Now, the question on this is, well, why is this important? The golf ball doesn't care how I put the club down. The golf ball only cares about what the club face is doing when it hits the golf ball, right? But why it's important is because, like everything with setup, for the full swing, the little errors in setup actually lead to compensations in the swing, or have a tendency to do that. So what I learned out of this is that I, at setup, have a tendency, and I did this all the time through probably 50 shots, have a tendency to have my club face 1 degree closed.
Okay.
Like it's a really small amount.
Yeah, I was going to say that's minimal.
I couldn't see it. The machine could. But it was 1 degree close. Now that we will come back to, because that leads to other issues that sprung up throughout the putting stroke. So apparently, according to the fitter, Dave, apparently my brain knew, even though my eyes couldn't tell, he reckons my brain knew that I was 1 degree closed at address.
Okay.
So, and that's a technique issue because I was doing it all the time. So that's a physical setup issue.
So you're conscious or subconscious brain?
Yes.
Okay.
Obviously subconscious, because my conscious brain had no idea. So that's the first metric. So you should be within about 0.5 degree of square, apparently. So 1 degree closed is not great. That was interesting. The next metric that was measured is the club face at impact. So what you're talking about, like how square the club face is at impact.
Yep.
And now the parameters where they want you to be in that is sort of in between about, say, 0.8 of a degree either way, open or closed, but getting as close to zero as you possibly can get.
Yep.
I was averaging with my normal putter, not that I took it, but I grabbed one that was very similar, so it was for all intents and purposes the putter that I'm using, which has been a face balanced putter, okay? So that's also important. So my number at impact was averaging between 1 to 1.2 degrees open.
Okay.
So closed at address and slightly open at impact.
Okay.
Which the operating theory is that because my brain realised I was closed at address, it was kind of compensating and opening the club face.
Did the metrics show where that was? Where the compensation was? Was it in your backswing, or was it in your, or am I getting ahead of myself?
A little bit, which is good because you're kind of going down the right path here, right?
Yeah.
So I'm open. Now, what was interesting as well is that before we started doing any of this and before we hit any putts, Dave was asking me, what's your miss? I said, well, my miss is generally two things. It's leaving it short and it's pushing it left. Remember being left-handed? So this...
I thought you were going to say your two things are missing it left and right.
I've generally got four misses. Sometimes it's short, long, left or right. Outside the hole. Yeah. No, it is though. Like generally, my miss is more likely to be a push rather than a pull. Like I'd probably pull for every putt that I pull. I probably miss 5 or 6 through a push. Yep. So this is supporting that. Like saying that the club face is 1 to 1.2 degrees open. Well, that's going to obviously lead to a pull. To come back to your question is, well, what's causing that and where does it start? It actually starts at address. And then what happens is the next metric is the path at impact. So the club path. So, much the same as with a full swing when you're looking at your into out or out to in path. So what was interesting on this one is that consistently, and I'm talking consistently to the number, my club path was coming at 1 degree out to in. Which means that if I've set up slightly closed by 1 degree, what I'm actually doing is pulling the club pretty much straight back and through on that 1 degree line that's out to in, and
but then if you're compensating with your hands,
by opening the club face a degree through impact,
so you're basically hitting a fade with your putter.
Yeah, it's exactly right.
Excellent. And interesting because Tiger used to do stuff like that. Apparently, he tried to put overspin.
Oh, I'll come to that.
So he was actually, he wasn't hooking his putts, but he was putting like hook spin. If you draw the comparison to a full swing, he was putting a draw spin on his putts to get a better overspin. And then sort of you come back to his short game. He used to like do all sorts of stuff with his short game, but specifically the putting, he used to hook his putts. Yeah.
Yeah. So now the thing is that these are imperceptible amounts, like 1 degree. It's tiny. And we're talking 1 degree. What that means is that imagine it's a completely flat surface that you're putting on. A club face of 1 degree is going to make you miss a putt at, I think the number's at about 4 meters.
Okay, so it's still...
so it's not much.
No, it's not much at all.
But it is not optimal.
Yeah.
So there's that. So the next one, anyway, basically those 3 numbers are all connected, right? Like the closed at address is causing or leading the subconscious brain to affect the club path, which is then leading to the brain to self-organise to adjust for that with leaving the club face open. So, yeah, it's a bit of a mind bend that all this stuff's happening in my body without me having any idea about it, which is kind of interesting. Now, the next one, which is interesting, is what they call the loft and rise of your strike. So think of it, the easiest way for me to think of it was launch and path. So the launch is the loft element, so how high the ball is going. And you think, oh, you want to roll a putt, right?
Yeah, but I would have thought also with if you're hitting a cut effectively with your putter, that's going to create loft and that's going to create potentially some side spin as well.
So you are partially correct, but partially incorrect because they're not directly linked on that. There's other things. There's other things going on. So launch and path. So imagine you've got the path of your putter coming in. So how much that's hitting up on the ball, and then when you add that to, and I don't know why I'm doing this with my hand for an audio podcast, but when you add that to the loft of the putter face, and every putter face has got maybe 3 or 4 degrees of loft on it or something like that, then you'll get the angle of launch of the ball. All right, so you add kind of your dynamic loft essentially. Now, what do you want it to be, Andy Walker? This is the question. What is the optimum amount of launch angle for a putter?
Yeah, well, I mean I don't know, to be honest with you, but if we take I guess some of the commentary that you hear on the PGA Tour, which I know is a lot of the time is inaccurate. But then sort of coming to think about what we're discussing before with Tiger, that he was trying to sort of hook it a little bit to get the overspin, I would think that you're trying to get the ball onto the ground with overspin as quickly as possible.
Yeah, so the hooking and cutting doesn't actually create overspin or backspin per se. That the mechanics of that is slightly different. But what you do have to do, and because this was the thing that I was really curious about, because it made no sense to me when Dave was running through it to begin with, the optimal launch rate for a putter is 3 to 4 degrees.
Right.
It sounds like a lot, but that's what it is, and it's about you're probably looking at 75% of that is the path, and the rest of it's the launch of the putter. Now, the reason for that is the more of that you generate, the more you're hitting up on the ball within reason, because you still got to strike the face, not hitting the ball north of the equator. Yeah. But the hitting up on it is actually generating topspin and giving that getting that launch right and coming up at the ball and effectively lifting it, that is creating that topspin that you're talking about with Tiger. So it's not so much the coming around it that's giving the side spin, but it's the coming up at it is giving the top spin. Now, I asked the question well, that kind of sounds risky, with the chance of then a missed strike of hitting the ground in front of it or topping it or anything like that. So again, they're fine margins. Like we're only talking a couple of degrees. We're not talking about really hitting up on the ball or anything like that. It's just
so what you're effectively saying is in your putting stroke, the bottom of your arc should be before impact.
Mm-hmm.
Is that effectively what you're saying?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, that's right. And it's also, whilst you're not cocking the wrists and releasing the club head, there is a little bit of a release the club head past the hands rather than dragging the hands through over the ball.
Yep.
Which I was probably guilty a little bit of, and we'll come to that point a little bit later as well.
That's probably closer to a push.
That's
I would have thought
exactly right. Hence open club face and all of that.
Yeah.
So you see how they're all linked? It's a bit mind bending, right? Getting through my pages of notes. So 3 to 4 degrees is optimum launch window for your putter. Mine was sitting at around 2 degrees.
Right. Well, it's not too bad. Or is it?
Is it? It's outside the window. But my question was, well, so what? What does that mean, and what's the big deal? And the answer that I got was the feeling if you're hitting a putt out of a little indentation on the green, like out of a previous pitch mark or something like that hasn't been properly repaired, and you're getting that resistance and the ball pops up. Well, that's what happens. If you don't have enough launch angle, you're kind of getting on a much smaller scale, you're getting that friction, and what actually happens is the ball starts to slow down, small margins, but the ball starts to slow down sooner than what it should, and it doesn't have enough topspin on it for what it should, and therefore your distance control gets mucked up. So your optimum launch angle is actually a really determining factor on getting the right distance control. Now, remember at the beginning when he quizzed me about my misses and I said I missed short and I missed left, we identified the left from the open club face, and we've actually just identified the short because it's the lack of launch angle.
Yeah, right. Okay. Because I guess logically, even if you have any launch angle at all, you're not the ball's not going down into the turf first. So how then do you get the pop up like it's in a? It's not. That's
an extreme example, but he was just trying to give that to kind of explain this sort of thing that's happening. But it's the two things, because the ball needs to have a little bit of fly, skid, roll on a putt. If it starts with the roll, just kind of repeating what was said to me, the friction's going on the ball too quickly, so it's actually slowing it too fast, and it's not giving it the chance to launch off the club face.
Okay.
So it's leading to short putts at the end of the day.
I guess for me, the logical question from there is, well, then just hit it harder.
Yeah, but that's not going to really work, because, and I know this to be true because for my whole life I've been trying to do that, but your brain's calibrating how far it thinks it needs to hit something, and you're actually not allowing it to do the right thing because of your technique. So just hit it harder doesn't work, because you end up then steaming it through, or you can't make yourself do it, really.
Okay.
There's another factor at play here as well, though. So let me get through it, and it might make more sense to you.
Okay. Yeah.
Because we're not quite done. Right. So anyway, the key takeaway out of that, though, is incorrect launch angle does have a severe impact on distance control. Okay. So that's the thing. The next one is putter head rotation. So how much you open the putter head, how much you close it. Okay, which is an interesting one. The thing with that, obviously, that's going to change depending on how hard you're hitting the putt, because you take your backswing further back and you swing through further on longer putts and shorter putts. So the area that they're interested in is 10 centimetres either side of the golf ball. So it's just that, that critical area through impact.
But does that have to do with putter choice? Is that where you're coming to?
It does.
With that, whether you're straight back and straight through, or whether you've got an arc. Depends on the type of putter you should be using. Is that what that metric's for?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
It is, and that should be sort of within a 1 to 3 degree range of rotation through that 20 centimetre window, which I was in. I had a little bit more rotation, like I was on the higher rotation end rather than the lower rotation end. And interestingly, I mentioned before, I've got a face balance putter, so that's not really a good idea for me.
Yep.
Because I rotate a little bit more through that window. That also, having a face balance putter and being someone that likes to rotate a little bit more would add to the potential of leaving it open or hooking it closed, because it's not the right style of putter. A bit of toe hang is more probably what I need. And then the next one, which is, again, relates back to distance control, is rhythm and timing. All right. So rhythm, this got really complicated, but basically the Sam Putt Lab measures the time that you take on your backswing versus your downswing.
Yep.
And the percentage of your downswing that is before the ball or after the ball.
Right.
Okay. So you've got, and imagine, and when I say downswing, I'm talking down and through till your putter head stops.
Is that sort of like what the tour tempo is measuring? Is it a ratio, or how does that work?
It is a ratio, but it's not so much that it's hard on the ratio per se. It just wants the. Well, no, probably it is actually, because like I say, it didn't show it as a ratio. It showed it as like total backswing, downswing, and downswing split between before the ball and after the ball, or through swing, I should say, not downswing. Yeah. Now, what was interesting, and this is where the human eye was important to back up the computer eye, because the Sam Putt Lab was saying that my rhythm was okay because my time on my backswing was the right ratio for my time on the through swing. Okay. But what the Sam Putt Lab was also saying is that the percentage of my down and through swing that was after the ball was not enough. So I had too much of my downswing before the ball and not enough after the ball.
So does that lead to deceleration?
That's exactly what that leads to.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. And this is where Dave, as the observer, he looked at my swing and he looked at the numbers and he went, oh, I don't agree. He goes, because I'm looking and I reckon I'm seeing a decel. Now, this guy was a professional golfer as well, so he knows what he's talking about. He goes, I reckon I'm seeing a bit of decel, but the rhythm stats here look okay because you're in the right area. But what, when you dig further into the data, what that actually says is that the backswing is too long and also too fast. So
right.
Its time appears to be okay, but it's getting you to a point then where you're too far away from the ball so that as you're coming down, you're slowing down, and that's why not enough of the through swing is after the ball, too much of it's before the ball.
Right. So what the point of that then from what I take away is that you need to slow your backswing down, not necessarily have a shorter backswing, just slow it down. So then the acceleration happens on your on your follow through. Is that?
It's true, and the one actually leads to the other because slowing it down also makes it shorter. Weirdly. Because what happened is we did this drill and he put a little piece of tape on the ground and said just putt and make sure you don't take your club head back past the tape on your backswing. And so I did that and I was going half the distance, right? Like I couldn't get it there. And he said, now do that with the same backswing but half speed and then see what happens. And amazingly, then I was getting it to the hole, no drama. But but the problem was because it was the speed of backswing was creating the decel, but to get enough club head speed, subconscious brain controlling things, to get enough club head speed, you had to take the club head back much further to be able to decel it to the right speed to still get it to the hole. Am I making sense? I hope so.
Yeah. Yep. So well, it's interesting because I've heard a couple of different theories on putting and more so putting tempo. Because if you listen to John Novosel Jr. of Tour Tempo, he says you can use the Tour Tempo app for putting, and I have tried that a couple of times, but it's mainly the short game. Tour Tempo
ratios,
yeah. That's what I was trying to say. That you should be using for your putter. However, then you listen to someone like, say, Cam Smith, and Cam Smith talks about being very even with his speed through his backswing and through his follow through. So he's not looking to accelerate as such. He's just looking for a smooth, reasonably equal speed all throughout his putter stroke. And obviously Cam Smith, one of the best putters in the world.
He putts okay, yeah.
he putts all right. In saying that, he's not decelerating. And it would be interesting to see what his stats are in relation to his backswing versus his follow through, and where that sits on, on data, and what metrics he has. But yeah, I know there's a couple of different theories when it comes to acceleration through the ball, and while I think you shouldn't be decelling through the ball, which obviously you were doing, I'm not necessarily convinced that accelerating too much through the ball is the correct, and certainly not for me. I don't think it's the correct methodology that I should be using.
So the metrics, the tour metrics versus the amateur metrics. So the database suggests that a lot of amateurs are on the have a downswing ratio of about 0.5, which means that they're hitting the ball right in the middle of the swing, of the downswing. Yep. Okay. The better putters on the European Tour in the database are hitting it at about 0.38 to 0.4. So it's not a huge difference, but they're slightly on the more through swing than downswing side of things.
Okay, so effectively what you're saying there is the and we'll,
so they're accelerating through the ball is what I'm saying.
So what you're saying is that 40% of, if you take the entire sort of putting stroke, 40% is behind the ball and 60% is in front of the ball.
Correct.
With the follow through.
Correct.
Is that
that's exactly what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they're hitting it as the club head is still maintaining speed before it started to slow down.
Yep.
So not jabby, obviously. That's a whole nother, and that wasn't my issue, but that you would find some other people that would get on this machine, they would have the opposite issue where their ratio is the other way around and they're too stabby or too jabby.
Yeah. Well, and also you look back at, like, historically some of the best putters in history, and you don't see it anymore in professional golf, but say Gary Player, and you listen to Gary Player about his attitude towards putting, and that's what he does. He stabs it like it's just it's a jab.
Yeah.
And he was brilliant. I mean, he won 9 majors.
Yeah.
And he got his putting technique. I think he talks about Bobby Locke being the great South African golfer before him, and apparently Bobby Locke did exactly the same thing. So that's where Gary Player got it from. So that was quite an old technique that was used, just the stab, and you virtually had
you don't see that now
at all.
You don't see that
at all.
But it's probably less of an issue than a decel. So anyway, that was interesting. So that's definitely that's more something that I need to work on. We did do a little bit, and this was interesting because it did come out with some fitting fixes to deal with some of these issues. So anyway, what did I end up with as a putter in terms of the, what did the numbers suggest that I need to be using? And this was kind of interesting, right? So the specs that came back on it is I've gone with something that has a 25-degree toe hang. So it's not a massive toe hang, but it's a bit of toe hang. And that is actually, generally speaking, derived through the type of shaft and the way the shaft connects to the head. So, a centre shafted club will be, generally speaking, a face balance club. Then you've got the single bend or the slant neck, which is what this is, which is a sort of that, light to mid toe hang. And then you got the plumber's neck, which will really give you toe hang and also give you a bit of essentially a look like an offsetted iron. So promote that. Is
that sort of like the ping answer type of putter? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah. So the other thing that Dave the fitter talked about is pretty much everyone's going to mallet style now away from blade just because of the moment of inertia and the forgiveness. So he said, don't even think about a blade. You're crazy if you're using a blade. Pilgrims, if you're using a blade, have a look at your life choices. So we've gone with that. We've also gone with a 34-inch shaft as opposed to 35, which is standard. So it's a shorter shaft. I wasn't surprised by this because one of the things that I had heard and read about in other articles is a lot of players use a putter that's too long.
Yep. I have heard that too.
That is pretty common. You definitely use one that's too long. We've covered that.
Yep.
So 34 inch.
I'm surprised that he didn't like recommend a broomy to you. Like, you know.
No, he was anti-broomy actually. It was pretty funny.
Because I mean, and we've had this conversation, you know, during the week, is that, you know, Minjee Lee now using a broomstick putter, Adam Scott using a broomstick putter. I personally think it's going to become un-Australian not to use a broomstick putter.
Yeah, I'm sure there's a few views to that one. So 34-inch shaft. What was also interesting is we added weight to the shaft, a heavier than normal shaft.
That's interesting. I would have thought that more weight in the head would have been more advantageous.
So the weight to the shaft was actually to stabilise the swing path.
Yep,
was the purpose of that, and it did do that, which was good. And the other thing that we did is we added half a degree of loft onto the putter face.
Yep,
to assist with the launch angle.
So effectively, you're making compensations with the putter rather than changing your technique at all.
Yeah, which is not to say that there won't be some technique changes as well, but...
So does that mean you've got to go change your putter after that?
No, because I did ask that question, and basically the answer to it was you can do all of those things. You're probably not going to make as big a change as you think you're going to make with your technique, because physiologically you deliver the club head in certain patterns. And what was interesting as well is that I spent a bit of time there going, take the loft metric, for example, going, I'm going to really try and loft the ball with the putter, deliberately try and hit up on it. How much of a difference do you think that I made to my numbers? Absolutely 3/5 of bugger all.
Yeah, right.
So even though you feel like you're doing all of these things, your body's just not going to really act that much differently, particularly, and we have to take this on board as players that are in the second half of their career, that things are so ingrained, it's much more difficult for us to make some of those motion changes than it might be if you were talking to an 18, 19-year-old player.
Yeah, I've noticed that.
Yeah. So now's the time to let equipment do the work for us. But there are some issues that I need to work with. Like I've got to, and we talked about a few things just with setup and alignment that need to improve, and they will help some of those things like face angle and path angle and some of those elements as well.
So did you get all your metrics like effectively to where they need to be? Is that sort of, you know, when you walked out at the end of the session, did you feel as though, you know, in the end, you know, the metrics that you were coming up with, you know, in your last few putts, were they exactly like where they should be, or are there still? Is there something else that you need to be doing?
There's a bit of technique. There's a bit of technique work that needs to happen. Yes, because they were better that they weren't perfect. They were kind of within thresholds, but they weren't perfect. But also, you know, as Dave was saying, he goes, we're talking about 1 degree on all of these things. Like we're not talking about 3, 4, 5 degrees. It's not massively off. Like it's just tweaks. It's not, you know, it's about really improving things. The biggest one, to be honest, is the decel issue. You know, and that's purely a technical thing. That's not an equipment thing. But what was interesting
was there anything that you did that like made your technique perfect?
Well, I'm glad you asked, because what was interesting, what was really, really interesting, particularly in relation to the, you know, all of the things there that we've identified that were linked, like the de-lofting, the putter head through impact, opening it, and those, you know, which is kind of a push. And I said to Dave, I feel like that's the sort of thing that probably will happen with top hand bias coming through the ball, and so the bottom hand's not sort of releasing is the wrong word, but it's getting dragged a little bit because the top hand's doing all of the work. And he looked at,
is that's because you're right hand dominant in most things you do, but you play left handed, yeah.
correct. That was exactly the point. And that's what I said to him. And he went, oh, he goes, I haven't ever really thought about that or heard about that, but I don't know, maybe. Like there's logic to it. It sounds reasonable. And I said, well, I think there's only one way to test this. And he goes, what's that? I said, can I hit a few on the machine right-handed? And let's look at the numbers and see what happens. And he went, sure. And I said, I will give you money. I will put money on this that my right-handed numbers are going to be better than my left-handed numbers. And he went, not a chance. He goes, I've never, ever heard of that happening. That's like literally not possible.
Yep.
So we said, okay. So I hit a few right-handed, and Andy Walker, I'm going to say that I felt as coordinated as a newborn giraffe at this point.
Yep.
I hit a few right-handed, and his quote, I'm going to read you his quote of what he said to me as he looked at the numbers. And he said, I never see, because I said, are these numbers good? Like, they look pretty good to me. And he goes,
yeah.
he said, I never see these numbers because players with these numbers or with numbers that are this good don't need to come in here and get putter fittings. It was off the charts. It was like top 5% European Tour numbers. Square to square club face, beautifully delivered on a neutral path with the perfect amount of launch.
Yeah. So we've finally settled the argument that we've been having since we first started playing golf.
I asked Dave and I said, take these two players. There's me left-handed and there's me right-handed. I said, if you didn't know that they were the same person and you just looked at these number sets, and I came in and I said, who's the better putter? Who would it be? And he goes, hands down, you right-handed is a better putter than you left-handed.
Yeah.
So I ordered a left-handed putter.
See, and this is the thing. You know, when we played in the final round of the 2024 yearly championship at Coimbra Waters, an old mate standing on the first tee, you know, when you busted it left into the bush,
yeah,
and he's, you know, said, "Oh, I know what your problem is. You're standing on the wrong side of the ball."
Yeah.
It was actually not too far from the truth.
He may have had a point, certainly with the putting. And I won't lie, it's in my head, mate. Like you wouldn't like it really is.
Yeah.
And I am thinking about doing a little bit of right-handed practice on the putting green, because how good would that be? Play tee to green left-handed and then pull a right-handed putter out of the back.
There is a guy at Coimbra who plays right-handed and putts left-handed.
It's usually because they've had the yips so badly that they've just changed and done something that, like, this is not the normal reason why you might do that.
Yep.
So pilgrims, any of the right-handed pilgrims out there, if you want to lend me a right-handed putter just to see how this experiment pans out, let's make it happen.
I've got a right-handed broomstick putter.
Don't want to
have a crack at that.
No, I was uncoordinated enough with a normal one, let alone a broomy. But yeah, it was quite something. So I thought that was a hilarious end to the whole experience after I'd spent nearly 2 hours going through all of these different putter combinations and all the rest of it, and literally all I had to do was turn around and hit it right-handed, and it would have been fine.
Excellent. Nice. I like it.
Yeah, so that was the twist at the end of the tale. But look, the takeaways for me, there's a few, and I've got kind of 4 key things that I'm working on at the moment to try and improve the putting. And the first of those is to focus on setup, because we did talk about a few things with setup. Now, interestingly, and this is point 2 actually, is don't stand too close to the ball. Is we were talking about, he was saying, and we were looking at Aaron Badley's setup a lot of the time, because you know, there's not many better putters out there than Bads. And a lot of people, I was guilty of this, actually stand with the toes too close to the golf ball.
Yeah, right. Okay.
I never thought I stood particularly close to the golf ball, but...
So does that mean that your eyes were on the outside of your...
No, I wasn't that far, but I was definitely straight over the golf ball.
Okay.
Now, apparently...
I've always thought that if your eyes are directly over the golf ball, and obviously then the line, that's the ideal, or maybe just inside.
Apparently inside is just inside. Like, we're not talking a lot, we're talking a little. Just inside is allegedly, according to Dave, the ideal. We looked at Bad's setup and he was a good 1.5 to 2 inches inside the ball with his eyes.
Yeah, right. Okay.
Which was interesting. I was surprised.
Did he give a reason for that, or was it just that this is how it is? And
apparently it actually helps the path of the putter head. And one of the reasons why I'm going out to in is because I'm slightly too close to it.
Right.
So standing that little bit further away will promote more of that in to out or straight down the line path, which is better than out to in.
Okay.
So there's that. The other thing was you should have a bit of spine tilt, a little bit like your driver stance.
Oh, okay. So, right.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, kind of leaning back.
Yeah.
With the spine.
Or like away from the target.
Yep. Should be a bit of spine tilt. I know I was far too square, so my shoulders were quite square, and they should be slightly tilted. Your back shoulder, so for me, my left, for you, your right, should be lower than your lead shoulder.
Okay, that's interesting.
Yep. This is less relevant for you with your broomy, but certainly with a standard putter. And that was part of the reason to go to the shorter shaft, was to promote that as well in my setup.
Yep.
So there's that. And then the other one was, and this one I know, but I'd kind of not focused on and therefore was making this error again, is having the straight line of your forearm and the putter shaft. So from the elbow down, your forearm, putter down to the head. So from your elbow to the head of the putter should be a straight line.
Yeah, right. Okay.
Now, a really bad example of not doing that is Hideki Matsuyama, who's got quite the kink. But the best putters, and watch it, like have a look on PGA Tour and you'll see that they're all really good at this, is the straight line forearm putter shaft down to the ball. So
that's obviously your lead arm, yeah?
Yeah. But you'll from down the line, you'll see they both end up looking like that because they're all pretty much in unison.
Okay.
So there's that. And then the other one which is interesting actually is, how we talked about I was not necessarily de-lofting, but not lofting enough for launch, which was affecting the distance control. So I've had the practice mat out here at home and I read another article randomly with someone that was talking about something similar and saying that he found with a slight forward press of the hands at setup, that actually promoted him to somewhat release the putter head through impact and improve his launch characteristics.
Yep.
Whereas when he had it more neutral, he was actually then pushing the hands forward through impact. So I've tried that, and that actually does seem to work. So that's something I want to explore.
Well, I've always had a forward press with my putting, and I worked on that because I find that I do roll the ball a lot truer with my putting when I've got that slight forward press, and for me, it probably acts more of a trigger for the takeaway rather than anything else. But that I have found that when I've got that little forward press, that's the trigger for me to take the putter head away, that the ball rolls a lot truer end over end. So it certainly helped me.
And then the big one is tempo and swing length, and that's just going to be grooving that in.
Yeah, there's a bit of practice in that, and that's probably something that I could use myself. I think just having a look at tempo and what I do through, whether it's a decel, because I did, and it was actually during the New South Wales Country Championships, where I was trying to use the Tour Tempo app with my putting, and I found that it really wasn't working. So I just went back, and I remember halfway through round 2, I just went back to my old style of putting and I just putted heaps better. However, I definitely think that there's work that needs to be done with tempo in my putter swing, yeah, for sure.
I just don't think you can overstate the importance of tempo in the whole game, in everything. So that's definitely going to be a focus. So anyway, that has been my journey in putting over the last week or two.
Nice.
I feel like there's a bit in that.
Yeah, there is. So do you feel more confident then as you move forward, or you feel as though that all this has just got into your head and you're struggling a bit with trying to just see where it all fits and putting in a decent framework to be able to move forward?
That's where I'm at the moment. I'm waiting for the new putter to arrive. I've had notification from TNT Couriers that it is on the way. So it could be tomorrow, Andy Walker.
Nice.
And I feel that when it arrives, it will solve all of the problems, or not.
Right. And until it doesn't.
Yeah. No. I think the reality at the moment is that my head is swimming. There's too much going on. I'm absolutely thrown sideways with the right-handed result. That I shouldn't have done that. That was a bad idea.
Yeah. I mean, look, at the end of the day, while golf is there's a lot that can be derived from data. Golf isn't just data, right? There is a feel element to golf, and that I think is a really important, I guess, point and perspective to have, is that, and I've always tried to be technically correct, but then when I get out in the golf course, I'm not thinking about data and data points and
you can't.
Yeah, you can't. So I think it's when you're on the range or when you're on the practice putting green or the chipping green, you're working on technique and you're working on, those data points that you need to improve. But once you get out in the course, I think and I've heard a couple of commentators, and I completely agree with this, going to the golf course with swing feels rather than swing thoughts as such. And I think that's something that's really important, is that once you get out there, and certainly if you're playing competition, just to forget about the data and just try and clear your head, clear your mind, practice the mindfulness, practice your connected breathing, and just get out there with some swing feels rather than thinking, I should be putting right-handed.
It's not helpful.
I
am interested to play around with it a little bit, not in rounds, obviously, but just to muck around, just to see, because I'm not ruling it out in the future. You never know. I'd say it's highly unlikely because, as I said, I felt as coordinated as a baby giraffe, and I have seen a number of them, and they're not particularly coordinated.
No.
And I do think, in fairness, that whilst the club head delivery might be better, the distance control is going to have to stink, with that lack of touch and feel and coordination.
Yeah. And I think that's the difference between relying purely on data and then going out into the real world and actually applying that in whether it be a competition or even a practice round. I think you'll struggle if you're a left-hander and that's how you've always played the game, to then try and turn around and putt right-handed because some data set says that there are certain metrics that you get better. I don't think that's logically the best way to go about it.
No, I don't think it is either. But anyway, it's been a really interesting period. There's a lot of information to go through there and a lot of things that we talked about. And I mean, like anything, club fitting in general, I can't speak highly enough. Like, I would absolutely recommend it. And I think what you learn about what suits your game and your own tendencies is just as important as the piece of equipment that you get at the end of it. Like, knowledge is important. What you do with it, that's up to everyone individually. And the other thing as well is that it's different for everybody. So the things that were, coming for me are going to be completely different to somebody else. And that's things like but the fundamentals probably don't shift. So things like, what are your tendencies at setup? What are your tendencies with the face control? What are your tendencies with your swing path? What are your tendencies with your tempo? They're all, your answers might be different, but those fundamentals are not going to change. and they're all good things to think about. So that's probably my closing thoughts.
Yeah, and I also think that everyone's going to have their own little idiosyncrasies that I don't think you should fix. I think there are things that, the big things, you need to do something about it if you've got some fundamental flaws in your game. However, and the probably the most relevant and obvious example is Scotty Scheffler and how he swings the club, which his footwork is completely unorthodox, right? But it works for him, right? He gets the club into the right position more than any other player in the game today. Yet he's got his idiosyncrasies, he's got his unorthodoxies that he works with to get the best out of himself.
Yeah.
So I think that with all those data points that you've got, I think you need to just try and figure out which are the most important ones to implement that will really improve your game, and the rest of it, I don't think you can fix everything.
Correct. And that's where, for me, I genuinely think that tempo and not deselling, I think that's going to be the single biggest thing that needs to be worked on. And that's just practice. So anyhow, that will be the focus for the next little while. I probably need to groove those changes in a little bit before I get back out on the competition course. But that's the challenge for the next couple of weeks. So
nice.
There you go. There you go, Andy Walker. It's
good. It's good that you've got stuff to work on.
Yes. So that's my little story about the importance of putting and hopefully how to get better at it.
Yes.
We'll see what happens. So any other thoughts? I think that's probably a good place to wrap the episode, unless there's any other thoughts that you have.
No, I think we've covered a lot tonight, from alternate universes to putting theory.
Well, yeah. So anyway, in that universe where I'm Andy Walker and you're Steve Hinks, it's good night from me and it's good night from him. So on that note, Andy Walker, what do we need to do?
Rock out, Pilgrims.
Thanks for listening to us today. We love hearing from our pilgrims, so please reach out to us through any of the links in the show notes. We know golf is hard, so we hope we can help you shoot better scores and inspire you to keep trying. Rock on, pilgrims.